Drops it to the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr. making a huge impact.
Here's Edwards with the lay. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan.
This is the CFF Site's Week 13 College Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Joe DeSalvo. And look, we missed a week last week, short week. We had to get a lot in for you guys before the holiday weekend. I hope everyone out there had a good holiday weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoy time with your friends, with your family. And for all of you guys that played in a college fantasy football championship this past weekend, congratulations. Look, first or second, even if you finish second this year, nothing to, that's nothing to be sad about. It's quite an accomplishment to make it to a college fantasy football title game. I say every year, the most important week of the college fantasy football season is the semifinal week, because you've got to give yourself a chance to win the whole thing. You've got to get there in order to win it. And look, in most money leagues, first and second place is where the majority of the pot is at. And so congratulations to you guys that made it to the championship of your college fantasy football leagues, and particularly for those that won. Now, while we're on the topic of winning college fantasy football leagues, we didn't have a show last week, so didn't give you an update on the 4-in-1 Super Fantasy League. So I do want to spend a few minutes just giving guys a shout out for all the champions of those leagues. I don't think we had a repeat winner in any of the formats. I think all first and second place, and we're about to run through them right now. They only, we had 8 different winners in the 4 formats. So let's run it down. In the total points format, Big Boss Men, the runaway winner, won the league by almost 300 points. What a year for Big Boss Men, taking home the total points title. Tri-Spoke edged out Blackbeard's Delight, 4,583 points to 4,576 points. Go Tigers, 4,567. Vegas Killer Clowns, 4,554. I mean, it was tight from second to fifth, but Tri-Spoke pulls out the second place win in the total points league. So congrats to Big Boss Men and Tri-Spoke for winning first and second in the total points league. Let's go over to the 2 halves tournament, because in the 2 halves tournament, the Ruston Razorbacks, they were the first half champion. They were the first team this year to guarantee themselves a place in one of the tournament formats. And they played Sea Grape FF in the 2 halves tournament championship. And it was the first half winner, Ruston Razorbacks over Sea Grape FF, 489 to 391, a comfortable margin there in the win. But congrats to Ruston Razorbacks and Sea Grape FF for first and second place in the 2 halves tournament. Let's go over to the head-to-head league, because in that format, we had a 2-week championship in which the number 73 seed, HK Hot, took on the number 14 seed, Vegas Killer Clowns. Vegas Killer Clowns with a 15-point lead going into the second week of that championship. And Vegas Killer Clowns outpointed them in the end. So Vegas Killer Clowns won that. It looked like by a score of 605 to 582. So, roughly a 20, 25-point margin right there. But congrats to Vegas Killer Clowns for a first place finish, and HK Hot for a second place finish in the head-to-head tournament. So there are 2 more winners. And then, of course, we cannot forget about the Eliminator League, which the Eliminator format, there were 5 teams still alive going into this weekend. Addy B, 17, C Money Bobby, 44, Go Tigers, Jawbreaker, and Market Zero. And it was C Money Bobby, 371 on top of the pack, Go Tigers, finishing second with a score of 355.25. So there you go. C Money Bobby 44. Go Tigers, first and second place finishers of the eliminator format. 8 winners in total in the 4-1 Super Fantasy League. It is quite a league to oversee during the year. But congrats to all of you guys that persevered, stuck it out. Look, you got to fight those roster limitations, and you've got to be on top of your rosters every week, particularly as the season gets long in the tooth, and you've got to keep up with those rosters in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Congrats to all 8 of you guys for staying on top of it, and those payouts will be coming later this week. So that takes us through the 4-in-1 Super Fantasy League. Not a lot to discuss in regards to fantasy because most of the leagues are open, but we're going to do some things for you guys throughout the postseason, maybe into the bowl season, maybe do some off-season podcasts this year as well, just to bring you up to speed in college fantasy or with college fantasy football news. A lot to talk about. Ever since COVID, it seems like no one knows the eligibility of players nowadays and whether or not anyone else has any eligibility remaining. It's a common problem. I've said it before a couple of years ago. It's a problem we're going to see all the way through 2025. And then I think we'll see, it will be smooth sailing from there on out because no more extra COVID years for players. All of those guys will be gone. And so we'll get into college fantasy football in the weeks to come. But there's still 2 more topics we're going to discuss. College football playoffs. We're going to talk about Heisman. Let's go Heisman real quick because I think that's a really quick subject for me. And I may, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that disagree depending on what you feel about the Heisman. But to me, Jaden Daniels is your Heisman Trophy winner. Ever since that game at Florida State, I didn't think he had a good game then, but ever since then, he's been absolutely lights out. He's been he's probably been the best player on the field in every other game that I think he's played this year, maybe with the exception of that one game against Alabama when he got hurt in the fourth quarter and Milroe had a monster game. But I think Jaden Daniels has been the best player in college football this year, particularly on the offensive side of the ball that puts up numbers. Now, you may be on the other side of the fence and say, well, they lost 3 games. And if you're one of those people that believes the Heisman should go to one of the, maybe the best player on one of the best teams this year, then you're probably going to side on the, with Bo Nix. But I think, given all the Heisman conversation that we've had up until this point, I think it's a 2-man race. I think it's Bo Nix and I think it's Jaden Daniels. And I think in the end, I think Jaden Daniels is going to win it out. I just think when you look at his numbers, when you look at his performance, what he does in the game, forget about the wins and losses of his team. Just look at his performance in games. I think if you take Bo Nix off of Oregon, they don't win as many games as they have, but they win a lot of games. I think if you take Jaden Daniels off of LSU, you're probably looking at about a 6 or 7, maybe a 6-loss team. I think he's been that good with carrying that team with a defense that's been that bad on his shoulders. And for me, Jaden Daniels is the clear Heisman Trophy winner. Now, there's a lot of names that you could put in there because the one thing that I want to say, when I'm looking down this list, where does Blake Corum fit in, right? And I think Blake Corum should get an invite to New York. I think right now he's the best running back in the nation in regards to just consistent performance. But I'll tell you what I think has hurt Blake Corum and the fact that he hasn't played into the fourth quarter of almost every game this year. And I think that does factor into this conversation because Blake Corum really has just been a product of he's been hurt by his team actually being dominant. He's only had 2 100-yard rushing performances all season. But when you look at his numbers, he has scored he has scored at least 2 touchdowns in more games than he's scored 1 touchdown. And he has scored in every game this year. So I think Blake Corum deserves an invite. You've got to look at Marvin Harrison, who's had an absolutely stellar year. I've never been a fan of Michael Penix. I just don't think he's one of the best players in the country. For me, he's not in my top 5. But, I would have Corum in there. Jordan Travis, I think until he got hurt was in there. I think you've got to look at Bo Nix. I think you got to look at Jaden Daniels. And for me, I think the dark horse in everything, and I think a player to look out for, and I said this just a couple of weeks ago, And we're going to talk about this when we get into the college football playoff talk. And that is, for me, the one quarterback in the country that I think has improved more than any quarterback on a good team from the time I watched him play till the end of the year may just be the guy that could factor into his team winning the entire national championship. And to me, Carson Beck has been unbelievable at Georgia. He hasn't been Heisman good. He hasn't. But I think he's been so good that he may very well lead the Bulldogs to a third consecutive national championship. I wouldn't be surprised right now if it comes down to Georgia, Michigan for the title. We'll see how things play out. But I've talked about the Heisman, so let's talk about the college football playoff, because I think things are really clear right now as we stand if Georgia wins out. Should Michigan beat Iowa as expected? You're looking at Georgia and Michigan in, and then you're looking at the winner of Washington and Oregon in the college football playoff. I don't think there's any debate. Georgia, Michigan, and the winner of Pac-12, the Pac-12 championship game is going to be in the college football playoff. The question really gets tough is that number 4 spot. And you could say that Texas, they have that one loss. They have the one win on the road against Alabama. I think it's a different Alabama team. I think if you put Texas in that matchup right now, I think Alabama would probably be favored. I'd pick Alabama in that matchup. Don't take anything away from Texas. They've been really good all season long. They've been consistent. You can't take anything away from them. It's just going to be hard to leave Florida State out, even without Jordan Travis, if they go undefeated. I just don't know how the committee can leave Florida State out if they go undefeated through the ACC and have that undefeated record, even without Jordan Travis. And I say that because I would take Texas over Florida State on a neutral field if Florida State doesn't have Jordan Travis. And I'm not convinced Florida State, but for you Texas guys and for anyone else that has hope of a college football playoff hope, even maybe you Alabama fans, I'm not confident that Florida State is going to beat Louisville in that conference championship game. I think the Cardinals can knock them off. And I think if that happens, you're probably looking at Georgia, Michigan. I think the winner of the Pac-12 championship, and I think Texas. I was hoping that BYU was, and I like Oklahoma State. I was hoping that BYU would knock off Oklahoma State because I happen to think Oklahoma, Texas would have been a heck of a Big 12 championship game. I'm not sure the Cowboys can give Texas a run. I think the Longhorns are going to win that Big 12 matchup. And I think if you're a Texas fan, you're rooting hard for Louisville this weekend coming up. But for me, I think Michigan is going to take care of Iowa, And, I knew Georgia. Look here, I've been saying this for weeks. I think Georgia has been really one of the best team in the country. The 2 weeks before, I thought they were just going to run through Tennessee, thought they were going to run through Missouri. I was telling folks this past weekend, I would take Georgia Tech in the points. I think Georgia is really looking ahead to this matchup against Alabama. It's probably the reason why Alabama was looking ahead to the SEC championship and almost got tripped up against Auburn. But I just don't see Alabama beating Georgia. I can see Georgia winning that game by double figures. We'll see how it plays out, but that's my pick for the college football playoff. And I do think that Carson Beck is a difference maker on that Georgia offense. They should have Ladd McConkey back. They have Brock Bowers back. Their offense should be fully set. Dejon Edwards, Kendall Milton, they all should be ready to rock and roll. And I think Georgia is going to be really tough to beat. I think Michigan is going to be really tough to beat. I've been saying all year, the Pac-12 really doesn't impress me. I think Oregon is going to get tripped up, or Washington is going to get tripped up pretty easily if they face Michigan or Georgia. I just think those two teams are too physical. But I think we're going to get a heck of a Pac-12 championship game, and I think the winner is still deserving to be in the college football playoff. I just think when it comes down to it, we're going to see Georgia, Michigan as the top two teams. We'll see if I have to insert foot and mouth after the conference championship weekend. But my prediction right now is going to be Georgia. It's going to be Michigan. I'm going to call Oregon to win this rematch. And I'm going to I'm going to call for Louisville to upset Florida State this weekend. And I think we might see Texas squeak in there in the college football playoff because I think Georgia's going to beat Alabama. Wouldn't surprise me at all. What they do with the number 1 seed, I think Georgia may hold on to that just because Michigan's probably going to play the weaker opponent in the conference title game. I think you could look at a Georgia-Texas matchup, which I think Texas does match up decent. I think they match up well against Georgia. I think Texas matches up against Georgia better than Oregon does. And I think, we're going to see Michigan play Oregon. So that's my 4. Georgia versus Texas, Michigan versus Oregon in the college football playoff. We'll see how things work out this weekend and see if the predictions hold. But that's going to do it. Look, short, sweet show. Congratulations again to all of you college fantasy football champions out there. Going to see if we can do some things for the bowl season this year in college, college fantasy football wise. Maybe we'll do some team type formats as opposed to individual formats with all the opt-outs and players skipping the bowl season. We'll see if we can't come up with something a little creative this weekend. But enjoy the conference championship games. For all you guys playing DFS, Mike will have his write-up. He'll have write-ups on Friday, and he'll have his write-ups for Saturday. So all of you DFS guys, the projections are up live on the site. We'll have the DFS content for you. That's it. Enjoy the conference championship weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. See you then.